Welcome to High Performance, the podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Alexander Phillips. Alexander, today we're talking about an important topic, which is about core reluctance and procrastination. And you see a lot of agents that get into that position where, they all of a sudden, they sit down, they see a call list there, and then they procrastinate. They don't want to pick up the phone. Or even worse than that, they've got some good days in their business, like on Mondays when they're doing open for inspection callbacks, but then the rest of the week kind of falls away and they just don't have that level of intensity. And they find themselves doing other things, getting distracted rather than actually doing the calls. What can an agent do to get better at beating those particular things?
Josh, I think if you look at call volumes, then create more relationships, more face-to-face appointments, more listings and more sales. That they all relate to each other. And I think a lot of agents do hold off from making calls or probably maybe are nervous, unsure, or just looking for excuses. And I think it's about blocking out sort of the noises around you and really focus on what you're trying to get out of each day. And I think having call lists, like past appraisals, current streets that you're selling in, properties that you've got coming to market with a buyer list, and having it in front of you and making sure that you focus on it will make sure that you do get more and more calls done. And I think it's about making sure that you don't procrastinate and get on with it and understand, I suppose, what sometimes I go through this as well, and I look back on previous years or previous sales and how they've come to market and why we've got that business. And it always comes down to the amount of call volumes that we've done maybe 5-10 years ago that slowly built these relationships up.
And sometimes you just need a great deadline. Like I really love it, when you're inside of a campaign and all of a sudden you've got a pre-auction offer or even a normal for sale campaign and you've got to go back through and ring to, kind of see where the rest of the interest is with the other buyers, before you take that offer forward to the owner. And that's all of a sudden, for the next 40 minutes, I've got to call these people, I've got to get that result. And I love that on Mondays, the pressure and the intensity that comes when you've got to get all the calls done in order to be able to complete your vendor reports. So often for a lot of people, I think that it's really about having a clear deadline on I need to get these calls done. And if you don't do it first up in the morning, you're just not going to get it done at all, because I think that how you start the day, is kind of how you end the day. So if you start it with intensity, you've got clarity on who you're calling, then it's going to make a big difference to the number of people that are going to be calling back. What do you find is a really good tip for someone, just to get those first few calls out at the start of the day?
Get the hardest call out of the day first up, because I think there's always a reason for you to make an excuse to that vendor that might not be happy with something that's happened throughout the campaign or the miscommunication, whatever it may be. And I think that's always that one or two calls that it probably helps you procrastinate from doing other calls that you might have on your list. So get those calls out first up in the day and stop making excuses. And I think then, more will flow on from that.
And I think that the really big driver here is to actually understand what the measurement is. And the measurement that's really important is just not the number of calls or the number of connections that you've got, but really the number of appointments that you've actually been booking and putting into that diary. And if you're not getting the appointments, then there's often something wrong with the dialogue. Alex, we've been looking at individuals, that we've been coaching, and one of the big things is about making sure that how they actually sound on the phone is really important. So they're smiling before they pick up the call. Are they clear and purposeful in their dialogue? And are they learning to ask better questions to guide the customer, as opposed to maybe trying to just force a whole heap of dialogue out and hoping that that's going to be impressive when they're in front of that customer? So in order to be a good agent, they've got to get really clear on that. What are some things that you do if your energy's a bit off to get your energy back right when you're hitting those phones?
Yeah, I think that there's things that you can do, Josh, that obviously will, make sure that you come across enthusiastic, that you care for the client, and you're actually getting an understanding of what they're looking for, and you'll get a lot more out of it. And I think it just comes down to the time of day you're doing it, knowing when your energy levels are at its peak. Like I find for me, 7:30 to 9 in the morning is when I get the most out of it. I've just finished at the gym, just had a good breakfast, feeling fit and healthy, and I just find you just get so much more out of it. So I think it's also, not only what you're doing in the background with your eating and your health, but also knowing, your body on when's a good time of day to make sure you are obviously, giving it your most.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about call lists. Sometimes I think that agents, don't really think about what it means to produce a call list. And so, sometimes they might go into their database and they just go to a list of tasks or activities or plans or something that are in there, and they just print it out, and there's all these calls, and there's a buy call and a market appraisal and a past client call, and it's all over the place. The way that I like to do it is that I like to really get a good quality hit list. And so what I'll do is that if I'm calling around something specific, I'm going to write out in my mind, okay, who are the 10 or 20 people that I need to go and have that conversation? Or I'm going to go into my database and search specifically, like you're saying, on a particular street and ring those people so that I've got that call list in front of me. Now, I've often found that I need about maybe 16 to 24 names and numbers in order for myself to have like a really good quality 45-minute session. But I want to be clear and purposeful about the type of people that I'm calling. And what I see go wrong is that, particularly in using assistants, is that sometimes an agent might say, well, my assistant gave me the call list and they weren't the right people. Well, who's at fault there? Is it the assistant that's at fault, or is it the agent not being clear enough in actually saying, well, who are the types of people that we're calling today to actually get the result?
At the end of the day, it's a lead agent that's steering the ship, and I think it's obviously them giving direction and then the assistant making them accountable to make sure it actually happens. And you've really got to want to do this. If you don't want to do it, it's not going to happen. You're not going to come across with purpose on each call. So I think it's making sure, one, that people don't. I find agents don't have call lists because they haven't set up a structure or process to create call lists. And then if you look at trying to start a call list from day one, it looks daunting. It looks like it's too hard and it just never happens. So if you've got a good assistant, it starts, spreadsheets, call sheets, and, a really good database, it'll just slowly build, and then you're there to manage it, and it just keeps, rolling, and you end up building it and making more calls and getting more out of it.
And this is the challenge, I think, for people, is that they don't think about the numbers. So we were working in a business this week, that does about 50 open for inspections on a Saturday. And when you have a look at that across that sales team, if they met 10 people at every open, that's 500 people they're now meeting. Times that by 4 weeks, that's about 2,000 people that they're now meeting in the marketplace. Now, that's not all unique. Only 1,000 of those people are probably, individuals or separate because people are coming to multiple opens. But out of those 1,000 people, how many of those people already live locally? And if they live locally, how many of them will we then get into the database? And what we found is about 500 of them definitely already own a property locally. But out of those 500, they were only maybe getting 50 or 60 of those people actually put into their database, which impacts on how they're going to search now. So if that person says they live in the street and they live in Smith Street, then next time that we actually list a property in Smith Street, we need to be on the phone to go and have that conversation with those people. So I think in summary, Alex, the big drivers here are make sure that you've got really good energy, stand up when you're making your calls, always use a headset, make sure that you've got a good quality call list of 10, 15 or 20 people that are really important around that particular item. Be really purposeful in what you're doing in your dialogue, and use really good hook questions at the end to make sure you're actually booking for that appointment. So when was the last time you had someone from our agency down to give you an idea of the value? Would it be of assistance? If you're going to be out there and you need to buy before you sell, can I come and see what yours is like to get an idea on what you'll want in the next one? Or even something simple, like if you can get a little more for yours, does that mean you could actually buy maybe something a little bit more expensive? So I'd love to come out and see whether or not where the numbers fall, so you know exactly what it is that you're doing.